All right, good morning. Good morning. We start at 10:15, right? All right, so I apologize. I'm a minute late. I'm John Hernandez. I'm from Central ISD in San Antonio, Texas. It's definitely a privilege and an honor to be here. Definitely feel myself as a servant leader and want to help out as many as we can. We're all in this thing together. My feet are on the ground with you all. It's a grind, and I think the biggest thing is that we embrace the grind because very easily it gets intimidating. I've never met anybody that's been underwhelmed, right? So you got to be very careful in how you talk to people, power words, because ultimately to get where we're at, it took a village. There's no way that I did this by myself. All credit to our superintendent in our district. We got phenomenal people. Our principals are all on board. Got a great team and staff. But very easily it does take a village to get to raise a child, and we know that. But it's been critical on moving that. But I will tell you this. I'm not better than anyone of you in here. I was in your seat 2 years ago, and I knew there was something that we had to do. And I was more about an action plan, like I have to do something instead of, because here you have a choice. You get the information, you just write it down, information, and you go back, some throw it away, some remember, because again, if you don't do repetition, it's not going to stick with you. So you got to find some ways to, when you get back, to meet intentionally, put in your calendar, meet with your team that came here, like we got to discuss, and we got to agree to disagree, whatever. We're going to have to set some plans in action, and then it's one thing to talk about it, but then be about it, right? So you got to do the work, and you got to model the behavior that you want to attain, whatever the case might be. So it became very imperative that 2 years ago on the flight back, all the signs that you see, the resource guide indicators, they were on a Southwest Airlines napkin, 2 of them, right? So I knew, because I was already dealing with attendance, I knew that there was something that we had to do more. So I breached all protocol, went straight from the landing in San Antonio, went straight to the superintendent's office. I need 15 minutes. And, and so that's kind of hard to do with a superintendent, but luckily they were able to squeeze me in, and I just sold them on, these are all the different situations that we're in right now, we're facing. He said, it's definitely something that impacted performance, academic performance. And I said, well, these are kids that I didn't feel comfortable as a taxpayer. Someone lives in the district to process, go to court. It's unfair. Right? So how are you going to put someone that's McKinney-Vento, someone that's a teen parent? The worst thing to do is to compound the situation and go into court, because again, it's black or white, right? But this program and whatever, it's like 50 shades of gray. There's no cookie cut answer. There isn't. It's just a case by case basis. And so fortunately, he gave the green light to pursue a task force, right? Really a focus group, but he didn't know it was going to be on steroids, because I got a lot of people on that focus group, because I got somebody from each campus, because in talking to the principals, it was more about, you want to improve your attendance? Because everybody, there's a challenge across the country in attendance. There's different reasons, and it's what the challenges that were 20 years ago are a little bit different than they are today, but it's still, you got to find something meaningful to get those kids to school, and we know that it definitely takes everybody in the system. So how did we get started with this, right? So that's my family, but I will tell you that each one of them, in building this process, it impacted to where we're at today. So my wife, she's the boss, right, in the household, and she's the English 2 pre-AP teacher at the high school. She's been in education for 20 years. She came to me. She's trying to breach protocol 2 years ago and says, hey, I got a kid's not coming to school. I need you to go talk to him, do a home visit where the kids might be. Whoa, hold on. You have an assistant principal on the campus. You got to talk to, yes, I'm the truancy person for the entire district, but you cannot, call the White House right off the bat. Like, you got to go through the system, right? And so the assistant principal worked with me, said, listen, got a family, don't speak Spanish. I can't, there's a disconnect. So in our district, what we do is, through House Bill 2398, is that when a student misses 3 or more days unexcused, you have what they call an attendance forum. Attendance forum is very informational based. Basically, it's a great check-off-the-box community event to talk to family in the community about how to go through a report card. Some do not know in your community that how to read a report card, excused, unexcused. They don't have a clue. Well, is that what 22 means? Yes, it's unexcused absent, all 4th period. So that's a tendency that they're taking 3 lunches, right? So you navigate through all that. That's what we do in an attendance forum. So this little girl, bless her heart, we had 10 or more unexcused absences. Well, that was more of a sit-down meeting with myself and the case manager from the municipal courts. We met with each family individually, but at that time, when I met with her, never made eye contact, mother or the kid. So that was already a red flag. But the mother I did get out of, she's like, look, I don't care what she does. She's going to clean the damn house. This is all in Spanish, right? So there's always, however we want to translate that, but there was some cuss words in there. So I don't care if she gets on the bus or not, but house better be damn clean. I'm taking my medicine, and I'm going back in my room. And so the little girl, bless her heart, she said, look, my sister died 2 years ago with cancer, right? The younger sister. There was a sudden death. And immediately I knew what was happening. Unfortunately, the day of that funeral, that little girl lost her mother too. Right, that was the biggest thing. Is the mother did not know how to deal with, never went to bereavement, didn't know. And I said, this is cases that are happening every day, but we just have never, has anybody ever called the bereavement center? No, it's like, we don't do that. It's not in our MOU, it's not, we get too caught up in red tape, right? I was like, I get the phone, I call, I said, hey, listen, can you visit with this family? They speak Spanish, and so all of a sudden now there's treatment, there's resource guide, there's the process to get the kids some help that they need. But that's why the kid wasn't coming to school. So the kid was being a mom, basically, for the 3 days, while the mother was anxiety, depressed, and taking care of her needs, and also she never came out of the room, basically. So that was how my wife, that was that case. Then you have my daughter, who's now 7th grade. She was in the dual language program, and it was a very tragic incident to where it was in the news, and head-on collision. They're going to their little brother's Pee Wee football game. Mom and dad killed, right? And there's 4 kiddos in this vehicle, right? And so one of them is my daughter's friend. So she had the ripple effect of, so my wife and I are talking at the church, how do we communicate to the daughter? Because we got to have to talk to the daughter because it's going to happen because they ride the same bus from the middle school over to the high school. And so we had to coach her up on, hey, listen, it was a tragic event. And so for about 6 months, the daughter kept once a month saying, hey, so-and-so struggling, definitely. But it was a good thing that we put things in place for my daughter to be prepared. But it was a very tragic event because it affected her directly and then indirectly because then she knew that, hey, in the event that you see her down, depressed, that get to your teacher, get to your counselor because sometimes, the student may respond to a peer. Sometimes they don't. It just depends. And so fortunately, we were able to get her, but at the same time, she, like Dr. Hendershot said, she was teaching her peers on how to deal with that, right? So I trained and developed her, not knowing, but her classmates, now going to 7th grade, were more prepared because every time they saw her depressed, immediately it was go get the nurse, or go get the counselor. So she's constantly, and she's going to be getting the help that she needs along the way. And my son, right? So here he is. He's little Mr. When the Super upsets the daughter because he works very minimal and gets all A's, and she busts her tail and gets the B's, right? So dyslexic, 504, very persistent. But this guy's school comes easy to him. But he tells me one Friday, he said, hey, I don't know what's going on with this student, right? She's kind of crying because, again, he had been hearing the story of me telling the daughter. And so I said, okay, well, you already kind of know the protocol. Talk to your teacher. Well, I'll be darned on Monday. If this grandmother doesn't come into our office, and you could tell body language at 7:15 in the morning, good morning, right? Have a great weekend. She comes in, and I said, are you the guardian? She goes, I hope to be, right? So that was the first red flag right off the bat, like, all right, well, tell me more. Then she tells me on February 14th, it was the best day of my life. I'm going to be a grandmother again. I said, okay, so let's have a seat. And she said, well, when I get to the hospital, grandbaby died, right? Complications. I said, man, I'm so sorry to hear that. And then there was more, right? She goes, 2 hours later, my daughter dies, right? So double whammy at that emergency room and at the hospital. So she was helping the son-in-law, basically, on taking care of this child. And not to mention, she lived an hour away, right? So she's transporting all the way. So we helped her with gas cards. Because again, in Texas, she's not the guardian, right? You got to communicate with mom and dad. That's the red tape. So we called dad, and he wasn't in the right state of mind at that time. So for 6 weeks, till he got his feet under him, it provided that support. So and again, this is in building this process. So all 3, right, went through that, and that kind of gave you the validity, like we've got to do more. We've got to, and it's embedded within our household. And I will tell you this, that every time I see the news, it's a different ballgame now. It's you think of it from the lens of how is that going to impact our community, our district, our students, because there's things that are happening on the north end of town, there's going to be a ripple effect some way, somehow. And it's going to be, and I do talk to other colleagues in the district, in the San Antonio area, and some are still, no, it doesn't happen in our, I said, man, you got to pick up Dr. Hendershot's book. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. East Central ISD, southeast side of San Antonio, 269 square miles, 10,300 students. We got 1 high school, 2 middle schools, 2 intermediates, 6 pre-Ks. Bless you. 70% economic disadvantage, and then 70% use our transportation. I've worked in 3 districts. I'm telling you, they use a yellow dog in this district like never before. If they don't get on that, they're going to be stuck at school. And via transportation does not come out to our, when we have like 3 routes in an entire district. And so we've been, anytime I present downtown, don't think that I don't mark it and say, look, we need to get more ground transportation to come outside of 410. That's where we're located, urban, rural district. So this is fact. No grocery store in the district. As big as we are, 5th largest square miles in the state of Texas, but we don't have a single darn grocery store. So what's the impact? $7 stores, right? So all these kids are eating Kool-Aid, and that's their nutritional. That's what they're eating. So they're all crashing after lunch, right? So where do you see the spike in referrals? Right after lunch, right? So we're having to be creative. And my superintendent said, man, every time you go talk somewhere, you always, somebody's trying to call me to have a meeting because they want to, now they want to build, they built a library, finally, right? So I always tell people, southeast San Antonio, we do have a school district, right? So there's inadequate sidewalks. You need to run data on how many grandparents are raising grandchildren in your district. That is huge, huge. We have 269. I'm over DAP. Well, I'm sorry, I kind of forgot to tell you what I did. So I'm over attendance, dropout prevention. I'm over McKinney-Vento, our homeless population. I'm over DAP. I'm over all the counselors in our district. I'm a former teacher, coach, still a teacher at all times, but administrator, was a principal at at-risk campus. And so with those roles, the good thing is that you got a hand in in the cookie jar and in a lot of things that you can impact and influence. And so the one thing that I ran was we also had someone other than grandma, grandpa, mom, or dad that were raising this child. So we almost have 10% of our district being raised by someone, you know, and some of our teachers will complain, well, mom and dad are involved, because there isn't a mom or dad involved, right? Teachers need to know that information up front of what you're dealing with. If you look in the resource guide, we partnered up with 2 grandparent agencies because we're going to get training for our grandparents guess what, on social media here in August, because they don't know how to navigate through that phone, right? They don't even know what sexting is, right? So we're going to teach them. And so the last month, 4 parent conferences because kids were cussing, acting a fool on the bus, the DAP bus. That's when I did my little tally, again, being a former coach, right? You just write it up like, wow, how many more of these grandparents do we have? Because all 4 meetings were all with grandparents. There wasn't a single mom or dad in the picture. So there's our House Bill 2398. Everything we do is aligned to. So record number were court filings in Texas, but the judge made it pretty clear. Judge Bull came from San Antonio, and he's the one that initiated this whole House Bill, was why aren't students meeting with families? I mean, they're just sending them, and I said, it's easy to do that. It's easy to do that. So he did a poll. I think it was 20 students, and out of that, he said 40% were McKinney-Vento, homeless, right? Then you had another 20% that were teen parents. And I think the one that touched them the most, 20%, were life-skilled students in a wheelchair. Like, some school districts weren't even meeting with these families. They were just sending them, because again, on black or white, again, you see 54 absences, send them up, right? But when you bring the kid in and you see a wheelchair, of course you're not going to, but if you didn't visit with, of course it's easy to just hit send on that button. And so, create a lot of interventions, but when you talk to other student service directors across the state, some will tell you what they feel about that law, right? But that's my first year coming in, so I don't know anything else to compare it to. But I do know this: you better roll up your sleeves and find ways to help kids. And I just don't feel comfortable sending them to court, period, because we want to be proactive. Because I know this as a former teacher and as assistant principal, you release your power when you do your referral and you send it to the AP. The teacher is no longer in control, and you lose a lot of trust from that student, period. Because I thought you cared about me or whatnot. It's easy for you to get rid of me because, again, kids have a bad day, right? We just got to listen a little bit. So our second level, when they get to 10 or more unexcused absences, we meet with each family, with the case manager, or sometimes just me. And I want to know, and again, thanks to Dr. Hendershot, it was always, why are you not coming to school? So we avoid why questions in our district. We don't say why. It's very defensive. So now it's, what's the barrier preventing you from coming to school? So then you get and be ready to have some notebook to write because it's going to all come out. And then there's been times that we want this kid to be successful, but his whole entire circle of family and uncle, 80% are in prison, right? So how in the world? And then you get into sexual abuse and child abuse. I mean, it's on. And Dr. Perry talks about that. Like, you got to look at the whole family tree of who all is affected, because it's going to affect them some way, somehow. It might be now. It could be later on. So we definitely kept putting proactive measures in place. And then we did make some improvement, because only 30 of them made it to the third level mediation. Now I'll tell you this, out of this 30, 21 had mental situations. They weren't diagnosed. Either they're misdiagnosed or misdiagnosed, right? So I didn't feel comfortable sending them. So it was only 9 that went. But the 9 that went, I'm going to tell you right now, it was like, F you, Mr. Hernandez, right? Like, okay, we're going to go to court. Like, the parent don't want the help, and it's kind of the only way basically that you win is when you can prove that it's parent neglect, basically, on their, because they do offer parenting classes through these court proceedings. As you implement this program, this is very easy but definitely take pictures of whatever slides. Data, some of superintendents are data driven. This is real. All this stuff is research based. I Googled it, pulled it off, but this stuff works, because I've had superintendents in San Antonio call me like, where'd you get that stuff at? Like, is that real? So yeah, it's each day in America. This is real. So this is 2014. Now this is 2017. They got more precise with 2 seconds. So there's a dropout every 9 seconds, right? And so that's the state of America's children in 2017. So that it comes out like every 3 or 4 years. All right, so a lot of people see up here, right? So it's under the surface. So what you see underneath the surface that we have to get to is a poverty, discrimination, because someone's not going to come up forward to tell you, hey, look, I can't afford my meal today, or, we just got kicked out of the house, apartment, or whatever the case might be. So always look, they use an iceberg, the roots, whatever it is, you want to be able to show that. There's a really good video under the surface on YouTube. Definitely encourage you to show that, because that's a very powerful video. If time permits, I'll show you some of those. Everything we do is aligned to Dr. Hernandez. You guys have been here. I mean, he's phenomenal, very caring. The biggest takeaway that I had two and a half years ago when I met him for the first time in San Antonio at the Dropout Prevention Conference is I was jotting down, hey, we got 65 kids, don't know why they're not coming. In Texas, we have 13 at-risk codes, right? You got to fit one of those 13 to be considered at risk. And so and to this day, if you call TA, they don't know who created that code. I'm seriously, I'm trying to figure out who created the darn deal. And because I'm curious as to why attendance is not on it, right? And so he kept talking about students beyond at risk, right? And I was naive. I was at risk is at risk. But no, there's beyond that risk. There's some kids that got a little bit more than he failed 2 standardized tests, right? That's at risk. If you fail two or more classes, or if you fail one of the standardized tests, that you're going to get at risk, whether you're in 3rd grade, 5th grade. So, and you guys, I've already kind of heard Dr. Hendershot, but he talks about what's a wounded student. I agree that there are many at-risk children in our society, but it became increasingly clear that we're missing a real issue. Many of these, they're not risking where they're wounded. Their deep scars are emotional, physical, and mental pain, or stuff deep inside because of society we're led to believe they'll go away, and that's true. Right, so we got some in our organization. In their eyes, they've never gone through a traumatic experience. That's a challenge. When you're going to have some staff members in your organization, they're going to refuse to acknowledge that, oh no, I had this and I got over it. I said, but the difference is you had a significant adult in your life. These kids here don't have anybody, right? Mom or dad are both locked up, and grandpa's searching for answers, and he's pissed off because we're not giving him resources to train him on how to be a better grandpa, because he's trying to raise the same way he did 20 years ago. It's not the same. It's not apples to apples. And then why are they wounded? So this one kind of impacts the most. If you want to take that one slide to show your superintendent or your assistant superintendent, it affects every community, every state, every nation, regardless of race, gender, economic status. It has no limits, not even age. Everyone has dealt with wounds in their life to some degree. It's how we respond, right? So we have a big slogan in our district, E plus R equals L, right? So there's an event, respond, there's an outcome, right? So you control your response. You can't control the event. Okay, so focus on what you can control. And the brain, this slide's already been come a couple of times, but you want to show how it affects early on in pre-K children especially. to where it's affecting that. I will tell you this, that the more, there's research out there that the more traumatic event, their reading levels are you got a third grader reading at a pre-K level because it's affected, and then, they're in survival mode. So here's your famous 13, right? And so I just, and you didn't perform satisfactory in the reading test. If the kid's incarcerated, ESL, if you're in CPS, those kind of things, homeless, this right here, and most states have this because I looked at several states. These are what if, any event, you may be a dropout. That's all it is. You might be a dropout. If you don't put interventions in place, you might be a dropout 10 years from now, in 2 years. And we have an at-risk campus. The only way a kid can get there is by being at risk, right? You even have some kids trying to be creative, like, so what does it take to be careful when you show this to kids? Because we've had students fail 2 classes on purpose to get their butt over to the dang at-risk campus. Like, that's not how it works. Like, so you want to be very careful because some want to just make it easy. All right, so Central ISD, we got students beyond that risk. Loss of a family member, friend. It impacts people in a different way, so they're following social media, so it affects them, right? So if they're following somebody in social media in a different state and something happens, they could be depressed in your classroom, in your hallway. And so it's important to read body language. Mothers in hospice, both parents in car, they don't fit the 13. But in most cases, like I said, we had system in place in some spots. Not every campus was consistent. It happened in spots. But they weren't communicating with the school, right? And you had different reasons when we were meeting with those 656 families, is that they didn't trust the system, or they had a very bad experience in 3rd grade, 4th grade, like, why am I going to go now? And so, because before we used to send police officers to the house for attendance and force them in the car. And so when I took over, I said, we're not going to do that. Because I was just in the principal, drop them off at the flagpole, you'd get this. We got a police officer en route. I need an assistant principal to meet me at the front of school. Show up, and kid just gets dropped off there, and police officer leaves. Kids cussing, upset, like, really? Is that how we're going to do it? So we had to have a lot of conversation with our chief of police, like, we don't do that. We got to get to the root cause. We got to figure out what's the barrier, what's going on to where it's causing the kid to not come. Is he getting picked on? Is it, maybe he's embarrassed, and we've had some that, they didn't have clothing, they were wearing the same clothes, they were kind of embarrassed, and so we get them with our social services to help out with those things. This is a huge slide, if you want to take a picture of this. When you're explaining, because you have some in your organization that are just black or white, okay? At risk 13 TA, it predicts that you might be a dropout. It might happen if you don't put supports in place, okay? And it's academic driven, okay? The wounded student that Dr. Hernandez talks about that I've kind of discovered, the trauma event's already occurred. What are you going to do now, right? It's already happened. Dad died. What are you going to do? There's no predictor. He might be a dropout later on, but dadgummit, his dad died, and you better flag that date because that date is huge. Now, here's the other thing. At risk talked about the kids incarcerated, right? But they're big on, yes, but he might be a dropout because, by golly, he brought Xanax to school, so he's expelled. No. This is talking about both parents are incarcerated. So socially, emotionally, it's affecting him, right? So that's huge for this student. In some cases, they think their parents are coming out, and they're not coming out. Divorce rate is an all-time high, right? So we're having definitely people not even married having children, all-time high as well. So it's going to continue to rise. We've had some couples get divorced within 38 hours, right? So the commitment it's totally seen a lot different now than ever before. And that's how you're seeing high school students quit one job. I went to Starbucks, I quit. I went to Bill Miller's, and I quit. I mean, it's easy to just jump around. I said, man, you're going to have to stick around because when we hire teachers, we want to see how long they've been somewhere. I said, but when you're doing this hot potato, you want somebody to say good things about you. Right now, all they know is that you're quitting. You're quitting. Every time things get tough, you're quitting every time. So it's teachable moments like that to tell students. And it's more on the right side is what resource you're going to connect the family with. That's the biggest piece. So what can you do after you hear their story? Dr. Hendershot said, you want to know how real this is? Ask because he knew I was over DAP, so we have our bus, we have 40 students going that bus. So first semester, I asked the students, just informally as they got off the bus, hey, how was the day? How are you doing? Hey, by the way, is there anything that has occurred in your life that has impacted your academic performance, your educational history? 88%, yes. Second semester, a different set of kiddos, 93%. So that was an eye-opener. They're like, wow, this is real. Like, so we're just not asking those questions in school, in class, because it's all about academics. And And then so most of them said, we've never talked to anybody. So we're talking about some kids even transferring in, all right? They weren't being asked, and so they're upset because April 7th, my dad died, 4 years ago, and I'm being suspended, right? So those are the things that we just never, it was always like, all right, you got to go, but ask as to the behavior, because he didn't wake up trying to cuss somebody out, right? So we have students that are beyond that risk. This is some more research here that will show you, that way you can kind of get your team, your superintendent to, because they want numbers, right? So Time Magazine, November 2016, they just polled anxiety, depression. So they're at 25 to 33%, just on that by itself. And so it's increased. Dr. Hernandez said 47.9%. He's going to give me that information as to that resource. But that's huge. I mean, because of the fact that there's something else going on that's affecting. Again, expectations still stay high. You don't lower them. You don't say, oh, pobrecito mijo. They stay where they're at. You've got to keep, we love you, care, but I'm sorry you went through that, but we're going to get through this. We're going to give you the skills to be resilient. Child Stress Network, they talk about 25%. This is 2008, right? So you can, I've heard 35%, and Dr. Hernandez 47.9%, so it's huge. So I'm just waiting to see who's going to have the most current research to change this slide. Journal of Health Affairs says 48%. 23 have experienced 2 or more. National Association of Psychology, but they use other factors. They are at 70%. In San Antonio, we have Josh Specia that's huge on mental health. He's on committees in Texas. He shares this information from the state of Texas. Each year, 175,000 Texas children suffer from severe mental health. Those 50% will drop out. So, but you got to remember, in Texas, it's very machismo. Some families won't tell you. I'm not going to go get help, right? I know there's an issue with Bobby over here, but he ain't going to go get help. We're in denial, and then so 1/2 of mental illness begin by the age of 14. Suicide is the second leading cause of death. 65 to 70% of youth in contact with the juvenile system have a diagnosable mental health disorder. Judge thinks it's higher, right? 31% indicated that if they or a family member needed help with mental health, they would know where to go. And that's where the importance was building that resource guide, because some they just don't know. Salud America, they got more Latino health, high schoolers attempted suicide than their white peers, 15% to 9.8. And then 8% Latinos say their child has never used mental health, and that's probably a little bit higher as well, right? So it's just kind of one of those. I know that any family you take to do a survey, you're going to get I'm not going to complete it. What's this for? It might get audited, right? Because they're going to lie about how much they make, because they're thinking you're going to take them away from their free reduced lunch. And families will tell me, like, hey, what's this for? What's the end result of this survey? And sometimes you got to help them. You fill it out yourself with them in the room. And then 98% of Latino kids suffer one or more ACE, and that's huge because it's not only one, but as they get compounded, the increase for suicide rate, it goes up with it. And then you got health disorders, you got all sorts of it's just connected. This is huge. Everytownresearch.org, 316 school shootings since Sandy Hook. They finally started taking this data, right? But if you look already, I presented in Dallas, there was 39 already from it's a sad situation. It really is across the country. Presented in March, it had 39. Now in June, that number, every time I present it, it's increasing. What they do, even if someone's the shot fired in their holster, that they count that. If it was a janitor, because there's some on there, they'll say, so it's not directly at someone at times. But if you look, they got the entire state, and you can click on the little red the button. It'll tell you how many loss of life and how many, the whole little story. But it's very depressing as to what's going on in our country. Texas Advocacy Project, 95% of adults have a cell phone, 70% have a smartphone, 73% teens have a smartphone, 1 in 7 sex. So they don't know what that is, right? So until you start getting them for child pornography distribution, that's a huge deal. They don't know. There is no owner's manual to Snapchat. There's no owner's manual to Instagram. These kids need the training on what that is, and it's easy to get on it. And we've had an assistant principal just make up a username, and all of a sudden now they can get whatever, and now you're looking at all this stuff that's inappropriate. I mean, that's how easy it is. There is no filter to that. So the more you can train or teach in your social emotional learning, make that a piece of that, it's huge. And then 54% of teens surveyed witnessed online bullying, right? So we had one in San Antonio that was David's law now. Unfortunately, he committed suicide, but that online bullying went on and on, and others were seeing it. And the bad thing is when you talk to different researchers there in San Antonio, they talk about it's a game to them, right? So they get on there like, oh, I'm going to take my life away. And then they want to see how many likes they can get on that comment. So based on how many likes, it's like a game. If I get to 200 within an hour, I'm going to do it. If I don't, I'm going to stick around life. So it's basically letting them know they're important. They're an important piece of life, right? But right now, I'm training my daughter on, if you see that, you see something, say something. And because we got to get that, we got to build that because self-esteem is, and then empathy is the other thing to teach. Those are some things that they're struggling with the confidence. Dr. Perry came into San Antonio and spoke. On average, teenagers, 2,000 to 4,000 texts per day. Unbelievable. And we wonder why they don't make eye contact, right? And then so when you look at some of the research in England on their sidewalks, because of the high murder rate or death, because they were not looking up. They were walking right through the intersection and getting bombarded by a bus or a car. So they literally have them on the sidewalk that says, look up, please, intersection. That's sad that they're having to mark sidewalks now because they're not looking up. This is a case that teachers sued the school district for not having social and emotional support, right? So this is in California, and the state of California lost. I think the biggest aha here was a 17-year-old was subject to continual physical and sexual abuse by his mother's boyfriends. He was homeless and slept on a roof at Dominguez High School cafeteria for 2 months. All right, so what do y'all think they did whenever they found him? Got arrested for criminal trespass warning, right? You're trespassing. But he was a student there, right? So that triggered the whole case, right? It's sad. And there's also a video attached to it, and the superintendent's kind of embarrassed that was the way kind of the chain of command went. But just to let you know, that's not a good case to be on the news for. But that's why when, you think of those cases, anytime I see something like that on the news, I always try to do a scenario with our team, like how would we do that in our district? Like do we have system in place? Because it could happen anywhere, right? So we're never exempt. This is one that I show our assistant principals, right? If a child doesn't know how to read, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to swim, we teach. If he doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If a child doesn't know how to drive, we teach. But if he misbehaves, we teach or do we punish? Right? Suspend. Right? Complete. It's a whole mindset that you're dealing with. But we do also have some that are still punitive. They're in that, if you talk to some of our police officers, they still want, you got to hammer them. Like, no, you got to talk to them. Right? Because I'm over dropouts. The kid's going to drop out. I'm going to go get them again. Why are we doing that? So instead of dropout, keep them in school. We came up with this. Anybody tell me LTUB4R? It's not a license plate number. Right? Listen what? Listen to understand before respond. Okay? A lot of times in education, we listen to give a reply right off. The kid's not even done with a sentence. Right? We jump in to try to do solutions so fast, but you got to listen to the entire story, understand it. We've had some cases to where we investigate, and we probably could have got that investigation nipped in the bud if we spent a little bit more time digging, asking further questions. And so that's one thing we work on a lot is to listen to the whole thing. Who else is involved? Who else has this information? Because we preach drug-free school zones, but we know that it impacts student learning. But this is also for our bus drivers, for our custodial staff, for our nutrition staff, because we want to understand if a kid doesn't have lunch money. Like we ask questions, keep asking. So ultimately, all of this research, and then why are we doing what we're doing, right? Because they're like, oh, Mr. Hernandez, he's drinking that damn Kool-Aid, right? So he's crazy. I said, no, we're going to work, because they know as a former coach, that's all we did was roll our sleeves up and we're going to work. But you don't want to burn your staff out, right? You want them to have the same vision that you have, because ultimately we want to assist all our students in our district. So I showed them all the signs. You guys have the resource guide. So these are all the indicators. These are all indicators that they told me in person, like what they were keeping them from coming to school. And I didn't feel comfortable moving them to the next step to court. But if you notice there's a date in the bottom, because it updates. Anytime there's a new case, like we just had to add immigration, right? And we just had to add human trafficking. Very sad. And we'll continue to add, because that's a living document that will keep moving. You know, Mother Teresa talks about, you know, you read some of her books, and I don't know how she did it. You know, it was incredible passion and incredible. She's got research that to be a nun, like every 3 years, she give a whole year off, right? Because you're taking that on, compassion on and on. So, I mean, I told that to the superintendent. He's like, no, you're not taking a whole year off because, you know, it didn't fly. But she gave the nuns, you're going to have time not to recuperate, recharge your batteries, and come back because you have to do that. This is a big mindset shift, right? So in REC Care, very privileged to have 70% of the counselors, but we got transportation, nutrition, everyone. And so you always hear, we have to do this, we have to do this. You read John Gordon and you see some of his videos. No, we don't have to do a damn thing. We get to. It's a privilege. We get to serve our students. Not we have to, but change the attitude to we get to, because you may not be here tomorrow, right? So we got to be very privileged and honored to the fact that we have number one, we have a job, right? Because you got districts that have cut positions and whatnot, but we get to serve our students. And so if it's another thing that we add, we're going to work together. We're not going to leave you on your own. So we get to. And like John Gordon said, eliminate the have-tos. That's the other thing. But he's got some video clips of some pro athletes that say that. You know, I get to play for the San Antonio Spurs, right? And then so instead of I have to, there's your resource guide. I strongly recommend to go through it. When I got in this chair, we had 5 or 6 different documents. Started calling some up. Some were disconnected. Some didn't exist. It was very disappointing. Like, man, we have this stuff on the website. Like, take it off the website. So I got myself, closed the door, protect your calendar, right? So my secretary, Becky's phenomenal. Closed the door. I acted like I was a 15-year-old with a weapon in my hand, called each one of these. You know, I created the shelter, the food, you name it. I said, hey, I don't have money. I got a weapon. I want to hurt myself. I don't know where to stay. I need help. 6 of them put me on hold for 2 or more hours. Wow. Came off, right? You got to do that. Every 3 months in our system, we have people that will check those. Every 3 months, we run by it. You guys still active? You guys still good? Because if they're a nonprofit, today's June 27th, if the grant ends today at midnight, that phone's being disconnected. And you need to know that, right? So if it's suicide hotline, you call that number. That's not good, right, to have a disconnected number when someone's trying to hurt themselves. And what we do, I don't do this all. I got trained and developed 3 of my staff, so it's not just on one person. Like, hey, you got, you know, the top quarter of it, you got the middle, and you got, you know, call these. So it's 5 calls for each person, and the sheet's done in 10 minutes, right? So too often we underestimate the power of touch, smile, kind word, listening ear, and an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. Ways to address, Dr. Hendershot's already kind of talked about this, but they're in his books. I definitely recommend those books, is to build the confidence and that they all, you know, you have the opportunity to communicate the high expectations. You know, show them you care, build a support system. Teachable moments, everything's a teachable moment, right? So anytime with cell phones, whatever the case might be, you know, social media is huge right now. You know, whatever teachable moment you can do. I don't know all the apps, but I will tell you this. I partnered up with, I don't have the answers, so UTSA doctoral program at UTSA in San Antonio, they have someone that teaches the community about social media. And she told me, do you recognize any of these 25? 2 of those apps I recognize. The other 23 are bad, right? They're increasing, they're triggering students to commit suicide. It's like they're hooking you on trying to say the right thing. And all of a sudden now you'll get a little advertisement that says, you should hurt yourself, or those kind of sad. I don't know how an app gets approved to hurt kids. I just don't know how that happens. The last one there, be able to suspend judgment. Because a lot of people, oh, that kid, you know, he's, you know, acting a fool. He's always late. Let's find out. You know, you got to be able to suspend judgment. Redeeming qualities, find that in everyone. So now it becomes how do we want to, you know, to do what we do, right? So how do we do that? Well, got with the focus group on steroids, right? So went to each campus, talked to each principal. They recommended a person. Went to nutrition. They got the directors, transportation, social worker, our nurses, our director of nurses in our district. They changed the name from wounded students to EC cares. And then the critical piece that we built that protocol on how does it look like in each campus, right? So the bus driver has to know, if I see something, say something, but I'm going to go to my director. That director's got the sheet of everyone in the district, the 25 of us. He's going to contact that campus. If he's unable to get a hold of it, you got to have a plan B. So they call me, right? And if I'm not available, then they got plan C with our social services because they're in our same building. But before that kid leaves today, they're going to be seen by a counselor, by someone in that campus, and by the bus driver, right? So just FYI. And the other thing in schools, we don't connect a lot with our nonprofit agency, right? There's red tape. So what do? I have an EC Cares meeting. I bring an outside agency, come in and present for 30 minutes every month, right? That's what you do. You tie in that child bereavement, ecumenical center, food bank, whatever it might be, what other resources they can help, because you got to bring them in. So this is how our response system is that the first initial responder reports to appropriate staff, and that's a football coach too. He knows who I need to, if I'm a campus coach at the middle school, I know to go to my counselor at the middle school, and that way the student. So everyone kind of knows that whole process. And then we work through our that's the other thing. It's so many, right? Some other treats that don't worry about it, help the one that's nearest you. But someone, the counselor or at the high school, they got a filter that will say this is a high level or low level. Because if you got a 7th grader break up with her boyfriend, is that a high level support or low level? You know, to them it's a crisis, right? So you just got to talk through that. Who can talk to? It might be their teacher, their cheerleader sponsor, whoever it might be. So sometimes they don't even make it to the counselor because, hey, we diffused it. It's they're taken care of. And then we use our technology software system that called Region 20 in San Antonio. And so we already had access. All our counselors had access to that number. And all I did, so instead of reinventing the wheel, you just create the system that's already, hey, you have access to that screen. We're going to use the same screen. We're going to put EC Cares on it. So that way it's not, again, you don't want to, bless you, you don't want to create an overwhelmed situation, right? So, because a lot of people get nervous when you see, here's another dang, program. We got Kool-Aid being drank, so EC Cares, the elementary, and then the date, okay? So if this kid's in 3rd grade, goes to 4th grade, that's going to show up every time. Just like this. So anyone that's got access to these screens, if I'm looking, that's my daughter Destiny, she's a guinea pig here, I'm going to click on that special alert button. And this button was already being used for if father can't be within 300 feet, and it just says very basic. But again, this is where it took us about 2 or 3 meetings to finally get it to where we're not breaching confidentiality. Because initially it was so-and-so's got, abuse and this and that. And it was like, whoa, hold on. We don't need all that information. If they want to find, it's kind of like our homeless population right now. It'll just say McKinney-Vento, contact social services. That's it. It doesn't say anything. So if you want to know more about that kid, call social services. That's what we did. We mirrored exactly what McKinney-Vento did. So very basic, EC Cares, OCREST, 1-12-17, and I put this as a test. So today, if you were to run a report of all the red alerts in the district, my daughters would say that, right? And so that date right there, that tells the campus, I need to bring her in before that date, or what is it, if she's already in middle school, then that middle school counselor is going to contact OCREST at that counselor to say, hey, tell me more about Destiny, or if they hadn't met already, because we encourage them to meet before the year's out. So the benefits to that. So every appropriate staff member is informed. The proactive anniversary event date, you got deliberate scheduling. So right now in our 5th grade, we got 4 kids that don't have a father figure. They've already put them in the same class with the best male teacher that's math, right? So he is what they call their ghost mentor. So without the kids knowing that you're their mentor, I'm going to check up on them and I'm going to teach them about skills and whatever the case might be. So there's a soccer club. All the 4 kids are already signed up for the soccer club, not knowing that their soccer coach is they're going to be their mentor, right? So because some people don't like the word mentor because, I don't need more eyes on me. So this is a ghost mentor that's been working out pretty darn good for us. Counseling support, outside resource, and then at the end of the year, you print your whole list, right? And then you pass that on to the next campus. But we have, in our main meeting, we set the tables down to where 3rd grade sits down with the 4th grade counselor, the transitional campuses, and they go over the list. And basically, these are what's going on with these kiddos. So just to let you know, this is what worked and then what didn't work, right? So that's with our special ed pops as well. So it's a really good, effective transitional meeting. So what we discovered was this is a kid system, right? And so got to train the bus drivers first and last to see. So I went and presented there, and little did I know that it was going to spread like wildfire. What I wasn't prepared for was our transportation. We had 4 people get very emotional in that meeting, right? Some were like, well, where were you 4 years ago? And you know, some animosity because they knew that the school system had fell them short. And so with that, we even had one bus driver say, hey, listen, I will tell you, when you came in to talk, I had the highest referrals in the district, right? Well, I was going through divorce. I didn't know what to do. You gave me the resource guide. I now got counseling. It's the happiest bus ever, right? So no referrals last year. So automatically there was an impact on this bus driver. They got what she needed, right? But again, I don't need them to report to me what services they're going. That's all on them as far as confidentiality. But just know that in your system you have staff members that are going through some event that could trigger, and so that you let them know that you're here for them as well. Not just a kid system. Connect with the right resource. So whenever I went to athletic or transportation, then nutrition got involved, then the nurses got involved, and then it just kind of spread. And then coaches. I think that was pretty impactful when you see coaches, because to get them all in one room is very uncommon, because they always think, oh, well, you know, I can't get out of this. But what do? We tied it into our kickoff event at the beginning of the year, when everybody had to be with the superintendent, and you schedule that meeting 30 minutes after. You're here. You're not going to go change into shorts, right? So you're here. We're going to stay in the same environment, bring them all in, and done, right? So real quick, 20 minutes on the protocol as to what, you know, show them some quick data. And so when I present, it's always sometimes 15 minutes to 30, depending on their schedule. Last one there, noticing I went out to churches, called them up, and so we had a meeting, and we had 7 churches come, because it's a situation that they're dealing with as well. So we're going to partner up, knowing the data of the grandparents, right? So we're going to use mentors from the churches to help us come mentor these students on the campuses. And we're going to have a menu that any campus can call any of these adults in whatever parts of the district that we're at to get them to do that. What do? Well, going forward, we're going to continue to meet. We participate in community events. We've got a banner that says EC Cares, and you got to be visible, noticeable. I think our next plan of action is at a football game where there's a lot of community event. We're going to have a booth there and just talk about these things, because that's when you're going to get more kids identified. Present at the national conference, and you can never get enough of emotional literacy and compassion fatigue. Keep learning, and then we're going to continue community members and staff members continuous, because again, I'm now on the agenda for induction of teachers. As they come in, I'm on that agenda. So anyone that's coming new to the district that's being hired, I'm going to talk about this. I'm also on the kickoff for our district leadership team. This is huge in our district, because who's got the first? It's always the school board president, right? And he's going to talk. You're not going to tell him to shorten his speech. But right after that was always curriculum. This is what our results were. This is, because again, that's the most important. Well, guess who's right behind the superintendent this year, right? And so, because it's impactful, it's important, it matters. So what we're going to do is I invited that judge that has all that data. He's going to go right after the school board president. And then we have a professor at University of Texas that talks about the brain. And then I'm going to come in at the end. That whole morning is going to be on social emotional learning. That's how important it's got to in our district, to where they got to hear it before they hit their first meal, right? So biggest thing that we're going to keep doing is we're going to reduce variability, improve quality, and guarantee consistency. We got to be able to tell all our parents, community members, if your kid comes in here with this traumatic event, we guarantee they're going to get resources. We're not there yet, but we're going to work towards that. That's one of the goals. And then we're going to train and develop all, and all means all. That means even the guy with the weed eater, like he got training, because they don't feel important, right? All I do is clock in, and no, come on in here, because if you see a kid that's depressed by that tree over, you got to report. You got to know who to contact. Even if you call your or your maintenance coordinator, the director, and they can get out there, and then they know who's on that list to get them to the counselor. Everyone in our organization is important. Even the police officer that collects money from the cafeteria, like, come here. He's like, what? We're going to have a training, right? So, because you see something, you say something. Impact of relationships. And when you show this next video, this kind of talks for itself. Like, it literally, and anyone in your organization.
Did you see that? Why would somebody do that?
Please go into the classroom, no talking, quietly.
Hey, Miss Marilyn, how you doing?
We need you inside.
How do you think that makes us feel?
I forgot my number. What's your name?
me, I'm up here for you. Pay attention. Okay? Now somebody answer me. Somebody needs to answer me really fast.
Every time we're ignored or yelled at or silenced, the teacher takes away what's possible.
No horseplay, no running, and especially no talking.
Moment by moment.
Miss
Garrity, your student's behavior yesterday in the lunchroom, it was terrible. Next time, silent lunch.
Could you hear that? Stay in line and catch a ball. I'm not playing.
If this is education, we're in trouble.
Bye, Miss McGarrity.
Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you'll be forever free. The way it is now, 2 of the 3 of us will never be able to really read. It doesn't have to be this way.
Hey, Jordan. How you doing? Good.
Everyone we meet throughout our day can make a difference.
I've been waiting for you to arrive.
All the difference.
Good morning, Jordan.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
Good.
Go ahead and put your number in.
Talk with us, not at us.
That's okay. I'll look it up for you. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Okay.
All right.
Teach us what we need to know. That's how we get smarter.
Well, good morning, Sophie, Janicia, and Jordan.
And when you talk with us and teach us, give us bigger and bigger words.
Now what I'd like you to do, children, is turn around and converse with your neighbor and discuss where the mother might have gone.
Words that we can use to read and understand.
She's praying for evil, so she comes at night.
And that will take us places we can never reach without you.
Remember, we're entering the learning zone. Now, how can we show our respect to the children and teachers who are working?
We can walk quietly.
Yes. Okay, kids, so what I'd like you to do is continue writing your narrative, documenting your emotions. If you were the baby owl and your mother abandoned you in the nest.
What can you do? Learn all that you can so that you can challenge us to be our best.
You would have stayed and assisted them in whatever they needed.
Share yourself with us and show us how to share ourselves with others. Give us courage. Give us compassion. Help us find our own voices so we can become who we are meant to be.
Why would you want to silence us?
All right, so that's huge on the impact of relationships. Huge, and that just showing that it affected our bus drivers, nutrition staff. It affected a lot of people in the organization. So all you got to do is pull up a video. There's a lot of motivational stuff out there, but those are some things that it's going to move people differently. And so our process is we use our attendance. We dissect at 3. We dissect at 10. And then, so again, we go to attendance forum at 3. 10, we'll have a mediation with the family, and if we got to put a stop sign, we put a stop sign, and if we got to move forward, we'll move forward. Present to all campuses. Basically, we have a protocol for all of those items. And the next item is we already presented to churches, and we're going to present to local businesses, right? So the biggest key here is get on the district calendar. Now people in our organization know what EC Cares, it's on it. It's in there with curriculum, it's in there with everybody else. So if it's that important to get on the right calendar so where they all see it, principals see it, superintendent sees it, because it protects people's time. You can't have a meeting and have everybody out of the office, but they're like, hey, well, there's an EC Cares meeting. Yes, so they're going to bring their one representative or whatever the case might be. So fight to get those, advocate for those items. So there's some highlights. We got EC Care shirts. Highlight here was that we had, and it affects differently, right? So we had a shooting at Rolling Oaks Mall, 18 miles away, and I told my wife on that Sunday afternoon, that's going to impact East Central some way, somehow. She goes, yeah, keep drinking the Kool-Aid, you're crazy, right? Wednesday, the principal at one of the elementaries called me and says, hey, got a situation, got a kid very depressed, don't know what's going on, right? Called me back 10 minutes later because I was en route there. She goes, this kid, his dad was a shooter, right? A lot different. Wasn't a victim now, but he was a shooter. And so when I spoke to Mom on the phone, I said, Mom, where are you staying at? Where's he at? Stop watching the news. That's the most traumatic event because, you know, he was very bloody. He survived. 2 police officers outside his hospital bed, right? So they're waiting to take him in. So is he going to die overnight? They didn't know. And I said, he needs to stop watching that. And so got him what he needed. Again, It was a different form of counseling for that student. There's our logo. 2 years ago, or last year, we brought 10 members, right? So again, if it's important, you got to validate, fight for that money, that Title I money, Title IV monies are there. Amanda Merck with Salute America did our highlight story, and it's an article there, and then also the video. These are our data. We got 94.8% graduation rate, 1.2 dropout rate. I'm not happy with that, even though it's way below the national average, right? It's 80% graduation rate across the country, but my goal is to get that below that, so we still meet with those. We meet monthly, right? So we got a system for that. 17% mobility rate. The reason why this works is because our referrals have already gone down, right? From one, and then our DAP placements are going down. I'm getting calls from the assistant principals. Hey, what do I do here? What do you think? And I was like, ask the what questions, right? Stay away from why. And so before that'd be a suspension or whatever the case might be. So instead of a 3-day suspension, if it's on a Thursday, why not just spend on Thursday, the half day, Friday, and bring them back on Monday? Just because the state said 3, everybody wants to use 3. If there was 10, they'll be using 10, right? So we got to reframe that mindset. Hope is not a gift, but hope is a gift we give to others. Everyone deserves a champion. I'm kind of speeding this up, and I apologize, but thoughts become words, words become your actions, actions become your habits, habits become your character, and your character becomes your destiny. We teach that. I want to get to that one video. So make sure compassion fatigue, because of the fact that in this profession, people are burnt out and they're leaving this profession at a higher rate than ever before. You got to make sure you have an accountability partner. Somebody's got your dipstick, basically your pulse check. If you're not doing well, you're not going to do anybody any well if you're not taking care of yourself. So my accountability partner is a curriculum staff member, right? Completely. You don't want somebody that works in your same office. You want somebody outside. Y'all meet once every week, 30 minutes. And just touch base back and forth. How are you doing? What's on your plate? And trust me, mine tells me, hey, your daughter is getting older, and you need to get your butt home at 5 o'clock. Okay, so that's kind of a partner you want to have. Trauma doesn't stop at 4 o'clock. There's 86,400 seconds per day. They all matter. They're all important. Everyone matters. And again, that's back to maintenance. That's everyone in the system. The student's a customer. The dream is free. Plan your work. Work your plan. That's huge, right? Our children deserve it. A lot of times we work our plan and it just kind of dissolves. Your plan's not going to work on the first contact, right? That's a military. So you got to adjust, and you just kind of bring the group back together and we'll look at it. I'll show you one more clip of, that's my email address and my Twitter, but I want to get to this. This is a 3-hour presentation to squeeze into one, so I apologize, but I was just on the news on Friday. So.
Students end up absent from school. The Salute America program for UT Health San Antonio says intervention at school can help kids with that trauma and that stress. As Courtney Freeman reports, they've created an innovative new toolkit for entire school districts so that staff can help keep kids stay mentally healthy and in school.
It all started with school absences and not just kids trying to ditch class.
We were coming across some trends that we saw, hospice, family violence, tragic situations that mother and father not in the picture.
So East Central ISD Student Services Director John Hernandez created EC Cares using the entire school district to help these kids.
We have a representative from each campus, and we meet every 6 weeks.
In the first year of the program, about 600 East Central students had missed 10 or more days of school. Instead of sending them all off to court, they looked a little deeper and found all but 9 had underlying trauma issues. So instead, they led them to resources. It was so successful, the Salute America program through UT Health San Antonio caught wind. They helped create a digital toolkit districts can download. That toolkit provides a template to recruit staff to a committee, scientific information about trauma, help creating a chain of command when vulnerable students are identified, direction to the right resources, and ways to get parents and community members involved. Salute America researcher Amanda Merck calls the toolkit one of a kind.
Some schools are already doing some pieces, but how they can kind of make it more collaborative across the whole district.
And even beyond the district.
Whenever we identify a student, we put them in our Region 20 alert system to where every campus will know.
Passing on that vital information so no child slips through the cracks. Courtney Freeman, KSAT 12 News.
Oh.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, so 9 other districts in San Antonio were in that. UT, Amanda Merck made the platform. So 9 other districts in San Antonio are going to imitate, kind of model what we're doing, because we're all in this thing together. We're not making any money off of putting that platform together, but we're here to help. There's a toolkit for 10, but that's my contact information in the event that you want to contact me. But thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for being here. Keep up the great work. And again, I was in your shoes 2 years ago, so it is possible. Thank you.